It was just a normal day in Ponyville. Spike were at the School of Friendship with Twilight. He was there to helping her with some documents and other school business. After a couple hours, Spike asked her if there was something else that she needed his help with. But she said no. They had taken care of most of the business that she needed help with. There were only a couple of more things that she can help herself, so Spike was free to do things that he wanted to do. So he said thanks and he left. He just walked around in town when he realized that he was actually getting hungry. In fact, he hasn't been eating anything since breakfast as that morning, and since it was into the afternoon. So he decided to go to Sugar Cube Corner to get something to eat there. And when he arrived there, he ran into some of his close friends, Zipporwhill. Zipporwhill was there to get some cupcakes for her and her dad. And they was small talk before her order was finished, and they continued the small talk even after they both had left the building. They were just small talk about like she asked him how things has been going on at the School of Friendship, and he said that this is always a busy day. This depends on what assignment she has been giving from Twilight, or if the other others needs any help. And she explains or asks him if he had ever considered to be working there as like a teacher or something like that. But he smiled and said no. He was not much as a teacher role model, but he enjoys to help the others despite if they need any assistant help. Otherwise, he actually enjoyed to be like an assistant. But he then asked her how things are at Mr. Shirley's school. She smiled and said it was actually fun, even though it's not like the School of Friendship, but she likes it. She mentioned that her school is actually going to have a dance soon, and she was looking forward to going to that. Spike said that he had never actually been to school dance before, but he hoped that she had a good time there though. So both said goodbye to each other, and Spike went back to the castle. Back at the castle, Spike was just sitting in his bedroom, reading some comic books, having some other cupcakes that he ordered from the Sugar Cube Corner. Even though there was something about Zipporwhill that he couldn't even stop thinking about. To him, she was actually very cute and very friendly, very energetic, and they had some things in common, but he didn't pay much attention to it. After that, he just relaxed in his room until Twilight came home later in the afternoon, and he did mention much about his interaction with Zipporwhill to Twilight, since she only did ask if he had done something out afterwards. He said just going home, read some comic books, just relaxing for the most part. Then he asked her if there's going to be any big business or if that she need any bigger help by the next day. And Twilight said no, that they had taken care of most of the big things or business at the school, so he was actually have a day off for once. And he actually surprised though. So the next day, when Spike had a day off, he actually just walked around in town, spent some time with some of the friends, and he even actually went to Rarity's boutique. Even though that he had at this point had revealed his feelings towards Rarity, but she liked him only as like a brother, which he took very hard, but after a while, he got used to it. He moved on, and he still went to her boutique to help her if needed. She was actually very hurt to see him so hurt, but after a while, she saw that he was smiling again, and he had moved on. Even deep down in his heart, he wished that he could find some pony to be with. Even that he may not realize that one day soon it would happen without having any suspicions. A couple of days later, just the day before the school dance was going to happen, Zipporwhill, she had asked some of the boys at the school if they had any date for a school dance, and turns out every single one had a date for the prom, for the dance, except for her. She wouldn't had any date to dance, and she felt a bit devastated. First, she had the thought about asking Rumble, but he was going with Scootaloo, and then she thought maybe Body Mash, but he was going with Sweetie Belle. So she had probably had asked every single boy at the school, but every pony had of them a date, except for her. And for that, she thought maybe that she just stay home and just not go to school to dance. But she realized if she does, she will miss out the fun. But it would be a little bit weird, a little bit awkward for her to go to school dance without a date. Even though that she just wished that she could ask some pony to go to the dance. But as she was sitting at the park, just feeling down, she heard a voice behind, or at least the side of her, and she saw it was Spike. He asked her if she was feeling okay, if something was wrong. She said that things was okay, that she was just feeling down because about the school dance. He asked her if the dance was cancelled or something. She said no, dance was still going on, but she didn't have any date for the dance. Every boy in the school had already been asked, and she was the only pony that didn't have any date at all. And Spike said, "Wow, that's sad," or at least he felt a little bit hurt for hearing that. But he asked her if it was possible or even allowed to go with some pony else to the dance, like another friend who is not part of school. She wasn't sure, but she thought maybe that the Miss Jolie would give an example, made as an example, would allow it. But she wasn't sure exactly who she would even ask. But Spike then asked if it was possible allow for him to be her date to the dance. She was actually surprised when he even had suggested that, though. She did ask him if he was serious, because she didn't want to be as being joked about this. But he said yes, but he said that he understood if she didn't want to go with him as her date to the dance, but she actually said yes, she would like that. And he asked exactly when the dance was going to be happen and what time, and she said about the next day around 6 p.m. So he decided it was at least enough time to get ready for that. He said he will pick her up at her place and go to her to school as her date. She smiled and thanked him. When he went home, he found Twilight in the library and he told her about this idea. She smiled and said she was feeling appreciated that Spike helps another friend in need. Even this is something this hasn't been done before. But he was at least willing to help any friend in need. So by the next day, he got ready around 5:30 p.m., got ready for the tuxedo, and just walked over to her home, even though that it didn't take that long to walk from the castle to her place. But he took it slowly and just walked casually through to her home. But when he saw her in this light blue dress and a bow in her mane, he was like hit by a wall in his face. He has never even imagined how beautiful she were in that dress. He even commented that she looked so beautiful. She smiled and thanked him, and they both went to dance. When they arrived, the others were actually surprised that she walked there with Spike. She had even had asked Miss Shirley that earlier that day if it was allowed, and she said yes, since Spike was a good friend of most of the others in school, and he was still young, so she didn't mind that. And of course, Zipporwhill actually had even informed Spike about it, so just in case. At the dance though, she was a little bit nervous how to be there, but he asked her for a dance and they danced a lot, and he even did a dance with Sweetie Belle, Apple Bloom, and even sort of, but most part he danced with Zipporwhill. Even for this is only one dance, or at least a school dance, she actually had a good time. Even better than she expected. Because if Spike had even had asked her to be her date, she had no idea but if she would have any fun at all, or if she would even have asked some of the other boys for a dance at least. But she was happy that Spike asked her. And as an even more gentle colt, he actually followed her back home to make sure that she came home safe. She thanked him but before he about to leave, she asked him if he would like to go on a date with her. He was a little bit taken aback of the question, but he said yes. So she suggested maybe to go on a picnic since it was Saturday by the next day. So he said yes. He actually waited. The next day he went to the park around noon and waiting for her. And he was really excited. And they actually had a good time at the park as a first date. Even Spike did mention to her that during the date, this was actually his very first official date ever, even though he had only imagined how his first date would even be like. But he was happy to have us a good time, and even she had. And for the next couple of days, they actually spent a lot of time together. They usually went to the castle to spend some time by reading some comic books together, or just simply went to the park to have a good time. And after a while, they actually made this official that they were official couple. Her family, her dad was actually surprised, but quite happy to see his daughter to be with some pony. Even if it was a baby dragon or less that, but he respected Spike. After all, Spike has always been kind to his family and basically to every single pony in town. And he had no regard to help that. So Spike actually was really welcome part of the family. And even despite all this, there were no much any problem within their relationship. Spike always treated Zipporwhill with good kindness, respect, and even made her laugh a lot. And even especially when she was feeling sick during the winter, when she was sick with a cold, he came by to her place, even though that her dad was not allowing to see her, but he told her to give this to her, was apparently was one of her favorite comic books, and even and that was something that she very much enjoyed. She thanked him after that she got well again, and they spent a lot of time afterwards. Even there were some of their friends who were a little bit suspicious, a little bit surprised when they first admit they were dating. After all, they didn't expect Zipporwhill to be dating Spike most of that time. But Spike was actually quite surprised himself when he did was ask her. Even for Spike, at first when he went to the dance with Zipporwhill, he never expected to be asked out on a date. But even though that he already thought that she was cute and very kind, and he didn't regret at a single day that he said yes to the first date, and when they both made it official, he wouldn't regret it for a single day afterwards. And one day when he told Zipporwhill that he was going to leave town with Twilight to spend some time in Crystal Empire for about a week, And she actually said that she will miss him, but she knows the week will go fast by. And both agreed with a laugh and said he would see her soon anyways. Even though when he were in Crystal Empire with Twilight, he did miss her. But when he came back to Ponyville about a week later, he actually had a bit surprise for her. He gave her a crystal heart necklace, and she loved it so much. Even though she really didn't expect it. She didn't even expect it that Spike would give her a gift, but she loved it regardless. Her relationship with Spike has always been stable, and their bond between each other was unbreakable. But even there were some moments that Spike and Zipporwhill had some arguments about small things, but he always worked it out. There were only a small arguments with what they wanted to do. One time, for example, when they both were at her place, he suggested that they could play some game, but she didn't want to play any game, and that she preferred just to read comic books instead with him. But he said that they could do that afterwards. It was almost like they started to have a serious argument. But after they made the compromise, if they play the game for about an hour, then they can read as long and much comic books they wanted. And they actually both agreed to this compromise, and it worked. Spike has realized that fighting with her would always a risk by losing the relationship with her, was something he didn't want to. Because the love that he gets from her for each single day makes him feel warm, feel bright in his life. The light in his life has always been the best for him, and he treats her like a princess. And even though that she really much enjoyed to have someone like him, but having Spike as a boyfriend was a bit unexpected for her. But she was happy to have Spike in her life though. After several years of being dating, Spike and Zipporwhill's relationship has still remained stable, but one day Spike felt ready that he wanted to propose to Zipporwhill. So one afternoon he took her to the park, where he did ask her, which she said yes immediately. When they both informed both their friends and families, they were all overjoyed. They were actually very happy to see both Spike and Zipporwhill to be tied the knot to be married. They decided to have a small wedding to invite close family and close friends. Zipporwhill had asked Sweetie Belle to be her bridesmaid, and Spike had asked Big Macintosh to be his best man. And every pony had a great time at the wedding. They actually had such a great time, and both families could see how happy they were together. And later, they went to Crystal Empire for a week as for the honeymoon. Both actually enjoyed much of their honeymoon in the Crystal Empire. After being married for 2 years, both Spike and Zipporwhill wanted to have a family together. But after a while, it didn't seem that was not going to happen. So both decided they wanted to adopt children instead. So they went to the adoption agency in Ponyville, and they said that they had tried for quite some time, but with their different nature, it has been hard, so they thought about adopting instead. And the director for this agency actually thought maybe it was a good idea. After all, there were many children that didn't have any family. And after this process went through, they were allowed to adopt. They decided to adopt 2 daughters who was twins, in fact. Both were actually quite shy around their new parents though. But but learning that they had a dragon as a father, both were still shy around him. They thought he was gonna be a dangerous, a great, evil dragon. But it turns out they were completely opposite. And their daughters loved their parents so much. Their first daughter was named Soft Spot. As a filly, she was quite shy, especially having new parents, especially with a dragon as a dad. She was quite afraid of him at first, but seeing how kind he was, and especially how generous and how good in baking he was. And in fact, since she was as a filly, she loved to bake. And that actually she wanted to be a baker or at least work at a bakery. When she was about 12, she went to start working at Sugar Cube Corner as Pinky's assistant as a part-time job. But it only sparked her as an interest that she wanted to work there permanently. When she was a bit older, around 18, she was actually fully hired as a worker, and she actually got very along with the Cake Twins. And in fact, she loved the place there. And she loved to be as a baker. She had fulfilled her childhood dream to be a baker. And one day she actually fell in love with a stallion from Ponyville. And they actually got married after being dating for about 4 years. And they later had 2 daughters of their own. Their second twin daughter was named Rose Shimmer. Rose Shimmer was unlike her sister. She was very outgoing, and she had no problem to speak what was on her mind and had no problem to make new friends. And when she saw that she was going to have a dragon as a dad, she was overexcited. She was so excited to especially having a dragon as a parent. She loved him. They all did all kinds of things together, and especially when she found out that she had Princess Twilight Sparkle as an aunt, and that she was excited. In fact, she was even chosen as Twilight's personal student, and she loved her aunt, and especially to practice magic with her. She really wanted to be a teacher when she was older. She was very much inspired by Twilight to be as a teacher. And when she was older, around 19, she had actually applied for a school of teacher to be a teacher. After a while, she had managed to finish her studying and become as a teacher. And in fact, Twilight had offered her a position as a teacher at School of Friendship, which she immediately accepted. She could have been more happier. And at some point, she actually got married after being dating her boyfriend then after about 3 years. And they later had 2 daughters and 1 son together. But 4 years after they had adopted the twins, Zipporwhill got a big surprise. She actually got pregnant. And when she told Spike, at first he couldn't believe it. But when the doctor confirmed that she were pregnant, he was excited. He was ecstatic of the news. And when they told the rest of the families and friends, they were actually quite surprised. After all, before then they had tried for quite some time, but no success. But now they were expecting their own daughter, or at least what they later found out was a daughter on the way. Both were really surprised. And then the day came when the daughter was born, and they named her Amethyst. Amethyst was very much like her older sister, Rose Shimmer. She was very outgoing, and even that she had in here her father's fire breath, that she could send scrolls to Celestia, Luna, even Twilight. But also, she had even inherited father's strength. But when she was born, both Rose Shimmer and and Soft Spot felt they were left out. But they both realized since Amethyst was actually their first daughter as they had their own, but they were actually very much happy to have a sister to play with. And Amethyst, she loved to play with her sisters, and she had a good relationship with them. Even though they do had sometimes some big fights, but she loved her sisters, no more than anything. And Amethyst, she actually felt that she wanted to be something big in her life. And in fact, after had been spent some time with her aunt Rarity, she wanted to be a fashion designer, or at least maybe works with a fashion or jewelry. But after a while, she wanted to be working with jewelry. And when she was about 18 and 19, she applied for a work in Ponyville they were working on or making jewelry. She was hired. She was actually very surprised and she was happy that she had fulfilled her childhood dream to be working with jewelry. And after when she introduced her ideas for what designs they could sell as a jewelry, at first her boss was very much skeptical about this, but when she had at least convinced her boss to allow to make at least a couple of the jewelries to see if any of the customers were even interested. And she agreed. If none of the customers didn't want to buy any of her designs, she wouldn't even brought up the topic again. So the boss agreed to let her try, and she didn't regret it at all. After she had put up some of her designs, they were sold almost immediately. Her boss was actually quite surprised they were matches being sold. So he allowed her to continue to make some of her own jewelry at the store, and it sold almost immediately, all the time. She was quite surprised, but happy. And at some point, she even got married with her boyfriend then, after been dating him for about 5 years. And they both had 2 daughters and 1 son together. Ever since Spike started dating Zipporwhill all those years ago, he hasn't even regretted a single day at all. Ever since, especially when he asked her if it was okay if he was her date to the school dance, which she said yes, she felt happy. And especially when she did ask him out the same evening on a first official date, and which he accepted. Ever since then, Spike realized that Zipporwhill were his true love that has been looking for all along. And especially though Zipporwhill, she actually doesn't even regret when she did ask him out on that picnic that day all those years ago. If she hadn't, all this happiness they shared each other all those time, she would have missed out all the fun and the joy that they have been with him. And this how Spike and Zipporwhill from the true love are gonna big family together. The end.